Zhejiang province, I can tell you the housing stock in terms of supply, I mean, probably you look at 2.5 years. I mean, this is gigantic oversupply, I mean, overhang. I mean, if that's in the Western society, my God, that's going to be a severe recession. But in China, I think different story because saving rate is very, very high, and you still have urbanization which is to be played out in the.
Hi Eugene, what are you reading at?
The leaflet about the property in China.
Oh my god, how come you have money to buy a flat? What's your salary per month actually?
I just have 40k per month, but it's still not enough for me to pay the initial deposit. Luckily, I won the access lottery and now I can buy a flat.
Why these years teenagers need to buy property only by this chance and by luck only?
Probably because of the housing bubble in China.
What do you mean by housing bubbles?
Let me introduce it to you.
China is now experiencing housing bubble, and with every bubble comes a lot of questions, and the biggest question people are asking is, what is housing bubble? Has China's housing market gone completely insane? Is there a housing bubble? Is the bubble going to burst? So this video is going to explain everything to you. What is housing bubble? A bubble means the value of someone's house is going up a lot. This is great for current homeowners, but at the same time, this is terrible for new home buyers who now have to take on a much larger mortgage to get their first house. And why is this a problem for someone's house to appreciate in value? Simply because it eventually gets to a point where the price of a house is beyond any accurate or rational reflections of its actual worth. The value of $1 million in the market may indeed only worth a lot less. Furthermore, because houses are overvalued, it becomes a way less affordable. So what is the situation in China now? There are increasingly worries about China's housing markets. Since the beginning of 2015, house prices has been rising sharply, with a particular acceleration in H1 2016 in Tier 1 cities such as Shanghai and Shenzhen. In September 2016, property in Shanghai with an average floor size of 100 square meter cost $675,000, and even amounts to a square-rating $825,000 in Shenzhen. The prices are even higher than the average sales price in other expensive urban areas in richer countries, such as London, which costs $630,000, and in New York City, which costs $670,000.
房地不动产虽然很赚钱，但是不动产的现金流不持续、不稳定。
There are a couple of reasons the housing market could be under so much stress. Below, we will separately discuss factors on the demand and supply side. On the demand side, urbanization could be driving up demand for property, especially in the Tier 3 and 4 cities. Urbanization has taken a flight since 1995. In the 13th five-year plan, the government aims to increase the urbanization rate even further to 60% in 2020. Migrants are largely attracted to cities, as income levels are 3 times as high as in rural areas, and migrants moving to the cities are allowed to buy real estate after 3 years of residence. Policy by the People's Bank of China could also have contributed to the rush on the real estate market. It relaxed the down payment of first home purchases from 25% to 20%, and second homes from 40% to 30% to support the housing market. The relaxation did not apply to the Tier 1 cities, such as Shanghai and Beijing. This was the first policy initiative of the government to stimulate housing purchases in the Tier 2, 3, and 4 cities and an attempt to soak up the large stock of empty houses in these cities. What possibly could also have contributed to the housing market boom is the loose monetary policy of the PBOC. A third contributor to the fast increase in housing prices are the limited investment opportunities. As capital movements are under heavy scrutiny in China, there are only three options for money to generate revenue: saving deposits, the stock market, and the property market. The equity market is considered to be unattractive ever since the collapse in September 2015, and it seems that investing in the property market is the profitable option for investors. Moreover, the interest rates, which equals to the cost of borrowing money, have been declining, which puts additional upward pressure from a household demand perspective. On the supply side, due to slowing demand from 2010 onwards and increasing vacant property outside the Tier 1 cities, overall real estate development has been very subdued. Growth of investment and building activities have been on a downward trajectory, only to show a slight increase at the beginning of 2016. This illustrates that there is already massive oversupply in the market, and investment has responded to that fundamental problem.
The situation in other countries.
New facts about buying a home in this country. A lot of Canadians are buying and selling right now. Housing sales were up in 75% of Canadian cities. The biggest increase in sales is in Toronto, and that's where prices are also soaring faster than anywhere else. The average price of a detached home in the Greater Toronto area is up 20% from this time last year. There's fear the bubble may burst, and political leaders spent today trying to ensure it doesn't.
At this sales event for prospective homeowners, buying a flat has become like winning the lottery. For some, it's their third try to purchase a 70-square-meter flat for $1.5 million.
I expect for nothing, then no disappointment.
Prospective buyers are given a number, and if picked, they will get a chance to buy a home. It's been like this for nearly a year, pushing home prices up 23%. Making Hong Kong the world's most expensive residential market. The last time there was this kind of a buying frenzy was in 1997. The market crashed soon after. Average property prices are now 90% more than at its peak 20 years ago.
There is no plan to build all these hundreds of thousands of homes. We have a housing crisis. I have to look at...
When we are talking about the impacts of the housing bubble, we could focus on the impact on household and financial institutions. In general, household debt as a percentage of GDP in China is still relatively low, around 40%, but the mortgage lending has been growing. Households are increasingly exposed to the property market as they have scaled down on deposits, even though money supply has been growing and put their money in the real estate market. Surging house price in major Chinese cities has made the housing asset more and more important in terms of household wealth. As a result, housing assets on average now account for more than 70% of household wealth and even 80% in large cities like Beijing and Shanghai. In fact, the downward trend in the consumption expenditure could be even speeding up if the property market will turn the corner, and this is an unrealistic scenario at the current point in time. Decreasing housing prices will defer household consumption, Chinese consumers will find it a deteriorating wealth effect, perceive themselves as less wealthy than before, as their housing assets are valued lower than before. As such, decreasing housing prices will negatively affect private consumption levels. The worrying thing is that residential sales in general show a very distinctive cycle, and even are landing vis-a-vis private consumption by approximately 8 quarters.
Exposure of the financial sector runs directly via mortgage lending, but also indirectly by using special financing structures in order to circumvent prohibitions for banks to invest in real estate projects directly. Low interest rates and looser monetary policy has induced real estate developers to issue corporate bonds as the main source of debt financing for acquiring land. To lower the risk of insolvency, real estate developers has also resorted to off-balance sheet financial vehicles, such as wealth management products. Due to such financial engineering, the actual leverage of these companies can be higher than present. In that case, property firm and bank are exposed to credit and liquidity risks in the event that housing price fell substantially. Higher than estimated debt levels of real estate developers could lead to a further rise in NPL, and banking sector stress in the event of a sharp and substantive property price correction. You can see that China's NPL are clearly on the rise, both on the level in billions of RMBs and the NPL ratio. Total registered NPL amounts to almost 2,000 billion RMBs, making up for an NPL percentage of total outstanding loans of 1.75%. So the underlying NPL exposure to housing markets is rising, which poses additional risk to the bank, which is a lender for real estate. In the event that house price game lost steam, property developers could likely struggle to pay a portion of their loans, which in turn results in a further increase in bank NPL and could force them to record investment loss. At the same time, banks have become increasingly exposed to property developers through trust companies and directional asset management plans on the top of usual mortgage loans, which creating an additional layers of risk and uncertainty to banks' balance sheets. If the real estate market takes a turn and bubble will burst, the subsequent reductions of property prices will additionally weigh on the real economy through a downward pressure on fixed investments and private consumption. There will be a lowering of economic growth, which caused by slowing constructions and other real estate-related activities. In addition, real estate fixed investment could suffer more through slowing fiscal revenues of Chinese local governments.
In ASAD model, a bust in house prices will lead to a shift in aggregate demand from AD to AD prime, and the economy moves from point 1 to point 2. Under price flexibility and perfect working capital markets, a demand shock will not cause permanent damage, and AS moves from AS to AS prime, and the economy will move from point 2 to point 3 until full production potential is reached. However, capital markets are not functioning perfectly. The declining house prices will cause a rise in the non-performing loans of both households, as well as real estate developers, which have been speculating on price increases. In the deteriorating market, banks will increasingly face moral hazard and adverse selection problems. Indeed, real estate developers which are involved in relatively risky projects, which can generate high profits, will pursue in their demand for funding, while the less risky projects will be terminated due to the higher funding costs. To counteract the increase in moral hazard and adverse selection, banks will scrutinize on the finance conditions by asking higher risk premiums from borrowers and increase screening activity. This will consequently raise the finance costs, lead to the more safe project to back out. What's more, property often functions as collateral, which will decrease in value due to the declined house prices, increasing uncertainty and further credit constraints. In short, if the banking sector is largely exposed to the real estate sector, ABUS will deteriorate the financial intermediation function of the economy. This is not much different than a supply shock, which will lead AS to shift to AS double prime. Ultimately, the economy ends up in point 4, and the potential production is permanently damaged, which clearly shows that it is ultimately a change on the supply side of the economy, which results in permanent damage of a financial crisis.
Is there a bubble in the property market, a new bubble? Because prices now have been rising for over a year.
The biggest bubble in history.
How do you see that bubble deflating? Is it going to be a crash? Is it going to be a slowdown? How do you get back to real sustainable property prices?
It's going to be very difficult. The problem now is prices keep rising in top cities and falling in the several thousand other cities. So the glut in medium and small-sized cities is not going away. Instead, prices in top cities are pushed up. I don't see a good solution to this problem. The government has come up with all sorts of measures, limiting purchase or credit, but none have worked.
The government is also worried that the property market is overheating and has been actively signaling this to the public. Therefore, there are several defense measures have been installed grabbing the rise in real estate prices, such as home purchase restrictions for second and third homes and higher mortgage down payments. Additional restraining measures for real estate developers' sources of financing were introduced in order to cut rising corporate debts, including encouraging mergers and acquisitions, swapping debt for equity, and facilitating firms' bankruptcy. However, there are loopholes on the cooling measures. For the home purchases restrictions, although it can prevent short-term speculations, it has nearly no effect on speculative investors who buy homes and stay vacant as they wait for prices to rise. For increased down payment requirements, it can increase the initial cost of speculators, but it also affects people who buy properties for self-use.
Cut raising corporate debt.
Ms. Chen and her husband have purchased 2 Shanghai apartments in the last few years. They're now on their hunt for their third.
这个房子你喜欢吗？看了好多套，这个房子蛮好。这个房子你看过好多套，一套这个房子是大概多少钱？1000多一点点，1000万多，1000万。
But Ms. Chen is not the type to let the government's cooling measures disrupt her buying spree. Instead, like others in the city, to buy apartment number 2, she found a loophole in the government's restrictions.
不断政府出来新的政策，所以也就放慢了脚步。你如果是婚姻状态，有一套房子，你买第2套的话，那就是付的比例要很高。我们最后也是听朋友介绍，我们夫妻俩就去形式上做一个离婚。
And what did your husband say when you told him you wanted a divorce?
应该是一脸的惊愕嘛，爱情不能这样。 我们试试看，我们离婚试一下我们的感情嘛。
The first suggestion is that the central government tightens and restrict local government to sell lands at high price, so as to preventing higher land price to push up real estate price. It can ease the overpricing problems. However, local government may not follow, as land reselling is the primary source of boosting local GDP. The solution may drag on economic expansions. There is trade-off between bubble risks and economic development. Secondly, the government can establish a nationwide real estate registration scheme. It can prevent speculative investors to let properties vacant and wait for the prices to rise. The cost for real users and speculators will also increase. It is also suggested the government can impose higher tax rates for multiple properties owners. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for watching.